Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the Mighty Joe Yeager. Mighty Joe, man, it's been a while since we've taped one of these mailbags. Man, coming up on the season, I feel like it was a great time to do it and bring back the mailbag. Got a great response on the board, and I'm raring to go. How are you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, man. Doing pretty good.
All right, well, let's jump into these questions. All right, Brian1069 wants to know, he said we all are used to Madden type and video game type numbers on offense. Where do you think Tech ranks in offense production this year in the Big 12 and in the nation? I think it's going to be similar, actually, Joe. I think they're going to run up tempo. I think they have an experienced quarterback. They have two experienced quarterbacks coming back. And I really like what Bowman's going to do. And I think David Yost, I mean, he's an accomplished offensive coordinator, and they were one of the highest scoring teams in the country last year at Utah State. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of going off track on this one, swimming against the stream, I guess. But I think, first off, I believe that Texas Tech's defense is actually going to surprise some people and be a little bit better. But I'm afraid that the offense is going to disappoint some people a little bit. And, I mean, what you talk about, I agree with. I think
Sure.
that Alan Bowman, assuming he stays healthy, is an all Big 12 caliber quarterback, even as a sophomore. Yeah. I like the starting receivers, particularly if Mannix comes in.
Yeah.
At that slot and is everything he's cracked up to be.
Right.
So I like that. At running back, I think you've got some good depth, but I'm still looking for that starter, that
Sure.
guy. And I know you're big on Shine and everything. I'm a little bit more of a wait and see on him.
I think that's fair.
So I mean, I think it's one of those deals where you got a lot of kind of average backs, but I'm not sure if you got anybody who can really just stroke it and crack the seam and get 40 yards downfield, or just churn for 5 yards on a regular basis. I'm not sure, although Sir Roderick Thompson, maybe, that latter category.
Yeah.
But listen, I'm just really, really concerned about depth on the offensive line, and I'm concerned about depth at receiver. And I'm a little bit worried about Bowman's health. I mean, I know we hear all the good stuff. Maybe I'm just being a worrywart. But when you've seen that injury come up twice. And if you have some injuries on the offensive line, he's going to be exposed. So I hate to be Mr. Negativity here, but I'm a little bit concerned about that.
And see, that's where I think another place where you and I differ is I definitely am higher on Jet Duffy than you are. Which I understand. I mean, look, the guy turned the ball over a lot. I mean, he's a big play waiting to happen for one team or another. I understand that. But I also think he brings something to the table that, for me personally, I always want that speedster, athletic quarterback, because I think that's just so much harder to defend. So, I think we're really close in how we see things. I think the biggest difference too would be, I don't take their struggles from spring probably as much to heart maybe as you are. I just, spring ball, man, you're playing close to the chest with all your plays and everything, and they were really evaluating a lot of guys who I think probably honestly won't even play. That they were taking a look at everybody. So I'll tell you what, if they struggle in those non-conference games, then I'll be worried. Obviously, and was it 2014 when they struggled against who was the first team? They struggled against Central Arkansas, and we were like, whoa, we better go out to El Paso and see what's going on. And they struggled against UTEP, and that was the story of that season. They were just not a very good football team. I don't think that's the case with this team, but if we see those struggles, then yikes, they may be in for a long season. Final question comes from Scarlet Ninja. He wants to know, will the coordinators be up in the box or down on the field? So it seemed like Tech missed some obvious things the last few years because Kingsbury and Gibbs were on the field. And also, do Wells and his guys have a history of making good adjustments during the game? Honestly, I don't know. I think David Yost is in the box, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So we'll have a lot more insight as far as the coordinators and how they do things. One thing I'm really excited about is, in talking with some people in the program at Texas Tech, is they're going to make the coordinators available every week. So both Yost and Patterson, which, they didn't do that in the past. So I'm excited to get their insight every week on what happened and, in the previous game. And then, of course, somewhat of insight of their upcoming opponents. So we'll have a lot more on that. Now, as far as Wells and his staff compared to Kingsbury, and his staff, it's well documented that Kingsbury did not have a very good record, when trailing at the half. Now, last year, Tech actually did a lot better in the second half than in previous years. And Actually, they both were really comparable as far as how much they scored and allowed. They each scored about 18 points and allowed about 13 in the second halves of their games. Now, the big difference is Utah State only trailed twice at halftime. They lost both those games. Michigan State, it was a close one, came down to the final possession, and then Boise State, they lost that one and they were trailing at half. Now, Texas Tech trailed 6 games at the half last year, and they actually came back once, and it was with Jet Duffy at the quarterback position. He was benched at halftime for one possession, and then came back, and then of course scored the game-winning touchdown in Fort Worth there. So that was the one kind of outlier there. Another thing as far as statistics, which could sometimes be deceiving, a big thing kind of bumping up Tech's stats there is they outscored Lamar 35-0 in the second half. So that kind of changed the numbers there in that regard. But early on against Houston, against Oklahoma State, they were running the ball in the second half and they were stronger than their opponents. That really led to those huge wins. Later in the season, they were actually beating Oklahoma and leading Iowa State at the half, which I had forgotten before going back and looking, and lost both those games because honestly they couldn't run the football and they couldn't come up with stops. I think those two kind of go together. I think that speaks to depth or a lack thereof, and then just not being able to control the flow of the game. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, well, ultimately as a staff, if you can't make in-game adjustments, and particularly halftime adjustments,
Right.
there's a pretty low ceiling on what you're going to accomplish. I mean, mediocre is about as good as you're going to get, and that's what you got with Cliff Kingsbury, right?
Yep.
And so, listen, Wells and his staff, it's not exactly Saban and his bunch exactly, but they've been better than mediocre. There's no doubt about it, or they wouldn't have got this job. So basically, I mean, just from a very simple way of looking at it, that tells me that they're competent at judging what they're seeing and then reacting to it, or being proactive and doing things to get ahead of the game against the other guys and force them to react to you. So I suspect that we're going to see an improvement in that regard.
Yeah, just on experience alone, Joe, this staff has a lot more experience than the last staff. I expect that to improve, honestly, those adjustments to be better. But Mighty Joe, man, great stuff from you as always. Great questions from y'all. Thank you for watching, and until next time.